let's begin with the short shot film competition update. I don't know. So they had it originally scheduled for September 2nd, 3 p.m. I don't know. Okay, so you guys probably know mainly the update is she has postponed it, and it wasn't because of films. Unfortunately, there was no tickets sold. Something happened in the marketing. So this is one of those things about nonprofits and stuff like that. There's a lot of people wearing multiple hats, or in this case, only one person to do all their marketing. So she put in for various outreaches to let people know about this screening that would be happening next weekend, and none of it got published. So nobody knew about it outside of the people who entered the films. And they only knew because they were wanting to enter films. So all of the people that were selling or that were buying tickets were the people that had found out through word of mouth. Not a good way to kick off your first year is through word of mouth. If this was year 5, maybe you could dial back on the marketing a little bit. But so she was kind of fighting upriver on this one, and decided to push it back till a later date. So that doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but it is not happening Saturday. And I don't have a better. There is not an actual date listed for when they'll do this. Not a big deal though. This is one of those situations where a huge bummer because I wanted to see it on Saturday. That's disappointing all the same because we were looking forward to it. You guys really busted your butts out there, and I'm very, very proud of that. Now the film is not without issues as any film, but I'm really impressed with what you guys were able to toss together in just over a week. Not even a week and a half. I mean, you guys found out with 9 days to go, leave here, go to your other classes, kind of throw some ideas around and so on. I'm really impressed in that capacity. So we'll watch it, we'll talk about it. That's one thing I want to get to today. Now, the other thing is we're going to talk about the other avenues. So about a year and a half ago, my partner got called by a local film festival that we've been in a few times. We've become very close with organizers and so on and so forth. They had a specific category that they were trying to hit a niche for. Because there was going to be a car show that same weekend, they thought, hey, let's get a category just on vehicles, racing, engines, motors, anything in that ballpark. And not a bad idea. They're very popular. That industry is huge. So they landed a couple. Well, they didn't have enough for an entire section. They wanted to play at least an hour of racing-oriented, car-oriented films. They knew because just through mixers and workshops and other screenings that we've been working on this documentary for a few years on the Hutchinson Nationals and the history of that racetrack. They asked us if we could put something together quickly to get it to them. So we went out, we hired an editor we weren't even close, let's put it this way, we were on a feature and we're still raising funding and we're still doing interviews, but we had done quite a bit, enough for a short film. So we started trying to produce a short film that was separate from the overall subject matter, essentially a chapter of the film, which I think I've shown you guys probably at some point last year because I just finished it. The whole reason we decided to put together a short was because they called us and asked us to. We weren't actually producing a short at that time. In fact, I was working on a couple other things, and we decided, okay, let's do this. So we got an editor, sat her down. One of our really talented friends of ours, Alexis Cruz, and she started putting this thing together on the fly. I mean, like rifling through, trying to get it out in time because it was all just sitting in hard drives. There was no timeline or organized. We did have a couple trailers made, but no semblance of a story that would have been relevant in a film contest or festival of this magnitude. We start piling through. We get to like a 9-minute cut, still really, really rough. But look, you could see where we were going with it. Like we had a good outline. I knew I wanted to tell this chapter anyways on this particular fire that happened about 50 years ago that changed kind of the racing industry from a safety standard. All of that's separate. They call us after we've put in almost $1,000 in post-production hours, or just labor, and then the amount of time that Pat and I put in, and they go, never mind, we decided not to do it. We were really deep already. And very similar to this same situation, about the time you guys found out, you were in the process, I think when we started realizing, you were probably about halfway through the edit, without being here with you, but just talking to Colton on the phone. And I told him, I was like, don't stop, keep going. And here's why, because now it's done. And again, not perfect, but neither was ours. We entered, I did about 150 hours over just about a week of my evenings, week and a half maybe, of us just like bloodshot eyes up till through the night, every night, until we got a 12-minute cut of our film. Because we knew we were this far in, and there was no reason not to have something to show for it. Well, then it got into Tallgrass. We entered on the very last day, a way, way bigger festival, and I'm always against like entering on the last day, but we had it, and we were like, let's do it. It got in. We couldn't believe it got in on the last day. We had to pay an extra fee just to enter that day. Then it did get into that same festival, new organization as far as the festival director, the programmer, everybody was new. Everyone had left from the year before who asked us to produce this piece because of this idea that they had, then it didn't work out. The next year it gets in and wins. It won that thing. I couldn't believe it. I was blown away that it won that. So now at this point, we've got into Tallgrass, and then we got into the festival, and Pat was so upset when it happened because he was ready to scratch the project, but when we sat down and talked about it, it made sense. We're this close, let's just keep going. Well, then it gets in the next year and wins. So that patience is absolutely a virtue. And now it is nominated in London for the biggest award that we've ever been nominated for. And if we hadn't finished that thing, if we just scrapped it, and we still had a good couple hundred hours of post to do, but you gotta think, we were a really long ways in already, and financially. Not to mention going all over the Midwest interviewing these people throughout that time. So now it's got into a festival that we didn't even know about previous to this. Never even in our wildest dreams thought we'd be going to London next month for this thing. And so that it's really just a matter of being patient, being optimistic, and overall just stubborn. That you're not always gonna get it, for what you set out to do that deadline for isn't always gonna be why you are just going to be so glad that you completed this project in the long run. So keep your heads up. It's not going to show on Saturday, but that doesn't mean that it couldn't be screened in other locations and other situations. And you guys all got a grade for it. The cinematography was great. I wouldn't mind, we'll watch it and we'll talk about it. But this also gives you that other benefit of, and this is what happened with us with this situation a year ago, is it allowed us to go back in after we paid the editor. She moved away, and that enabled me to jump in and spend a significant amount of time cleaning up and fixing things that we just didn't have time to get to had we made that cut on that deadline. So that does give you a chance to go in and tinker with some things further. So there's a lot of pros to that. There's a lot. I'm sure. Were you guys frustrated when you found out sitting in the lab, or was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
When you said it got pushed back, I immediately emailed Grace and I was like, hey, is this actually true? And she's like, yeah. I was like, son of a...
Well, okay, so, and that's why I wanted to give you that lengthy little pep talk, I guess, is because it is not all lost. It's just not what you set out for originally. And many films, many creative projects in general are that way. So don't be discouraged. It's just being pushed back. As far as, and what I really like when I hear that you're frustrated, because you guys all knew you were going to get like a grade and a good grade. You knew you put in the time, and you know I don't stress much on the grade itself, the actual letters and percentages. So what that tells me is I'm really happy that you guys put all that time in, not for an assignment. You put it in to create a film, and that's what you guys did. So you should be proud of yourselves. And let's talk about, let's watch it first and discuss it, and that's probably going to eat up a good portion of our time. what I like to do in this case is kind of brainstorm, and I start Googling, because you just go, okay, what was one name that you guys threw out?
I had joked about, and the cameraman dies at the end. Oh yeah, that's what it was.
That's what you were going to, okay, well that probably isn't. Normally I Google it just to see if it's already out there.
Yeah, that was just a joke. That was more of like to be funny.
Okay, we'll come back around to the name. But one benefit to having a little extra time is you guys come up with a name for your movie. But that also is a really good point, that if you can see that you guys even have a name, that shows how quickly you jumped into this and tried to put something together really fast. So I think that's cool. In this case, kind of a unique for our classes that everybody was on the same team. So there's not quite the same, I guess everybody's probably already seen it or participated, so we can't quite get the same feedback from like another group, but that's okay. What's some comments, thoughts, questions that you guys would like to start with?
I think it would have been like a little better if we had committed, or like even at the beginning decided that it was going to be a murder story versus like a monster like stalking story. And I think that would have saved us a lot of time trying to get specific like spying on shots, because I can't remember how long it took, but even just the shot where Cole's looking down the tunnel looking back, like you had to splice like 2 or 3 different like takes into one for that, and we could have just got coverage of just like nothing down that tunnel, and it would have made it so much easier instead of trying to have like monster prying or spying at the end and disappearing.
So what I'm hearing is basically you had you have known where you were headed at the beginning, it would save you some time. Sure.
Like a rough script to go off of at the very beginning.
Yeah, because your idea was just essentially you had an idea to do something from the perspective of a monster Blair Witch style that you had already kind of been setting on through the summer, right?
No, that wasn't that one. But
Okay. That you really can't blame yourself for that, but what's so great about kicking you guys right and throwing you into a film day one, literally day one of class, is that we're doing it. We're out making it happen. I'm going to use this project throughout the semester, referring back to, you know, having time to plan and location scout versus test this equipment versus making sure C-log is what you wanted to shoot in. You wanted to use a prime versus, you know, variable lenses, all those kinds of things. So yeah, obviously that makes sense where as a producer on this, you would have definitely, if you could do it again, you'd have a script to start with, sure. Because you guys were literally coming up with dialogue on the spot, and it's one thing to change and work with it and alter on the fly, and I think it's very important to be adaptive and not be stuck in, this is what I wrote, this is what they wrote. We're gonna live with this, but I think this was just the film short shot competitions, 24 hours, 48 hour, really common, and you see that happen a lot where they're going, hey, we kind of had this thing as an idea on the way here, but and most of those competitions that I've participated in and the students and alumni have is they literally are drawing stuff out of a hat, so you can't come up with stuff before, or even if you did, you're going to have to at least alter. And there's no doubt that some of those people come in with a script and they're just changing it as they go. And one of the things I really liked about those is they would have like a line of dialogue that has to be implemented, an action, so like a slap or a trip or, you know, what's some of the other, a prop. They'll include like a prop, and they will include a location sometimes, which is sometimes related to a sponsor or something. And I think that makes it a lot of fun. But it's going to lower the production value if you don't have a script going into it. It's just kind of what it is. So yeah, don't kick yourself for that either. That was really kind of in the design. What else? What's some other things that, in reflection, that you guys would do different? Maybe something that, happy accidents. One great thing about competitions, you get a lot of happy accidents too. Anything like that?
I'd say switching into a murder mystery was kind of a happy accident.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Sometimes, like when I was thinking about the bond, like whenever I think we were out, I mentioned something like, what if you're actually the murderer and stuff?
Yeah, it just kind of
So it
came through.
better. The one thing is like how it The one thing I would have changed is if we would, like Aiden was saying, known that it was going to be a murder mystery, show Michael and Aiden bickering and fighting in the beginning, because it's kind of like, you know, you're on this trail just walking around nothing, and all of a sudden,
Yeah, hindsight's 2020.
On the trail starting.
yeah,
It's like, man, it's hot out. What the hell are we doing out here?
yeah.
It's not unlike some of our documentaries. When we started Artists in Their Space, we literally just knew that this person was talented and willing to be interviewed, but we didn't have much outside of that. And so after we made about 6 or 7, we went back and Thomas, I think for my birthday, something like that, just doing a favor, he knew that I hated that first cut. It was so bad. Not that anyone did a poor job. The editor who did that first one was very, very talented, but she didn't have a lot of direction because we didn't really know what we wanted. Well, after we did a few, about a year later, Thomas went back through and re-edited that in the style of what we had kind of been implementing on the last few, and it was so much stronger in story, but it was the same interview. It was the same demo of her painting and stuff, and so I was very appreciative of him to go through and basically give it new life. And it helped a ton. And it was way different than what originally had been edited by Zyra, and she actually did a good job without having a lot of direction. So yeah, that hindsight's 2020. You may go back and redo this story in another way later. You've learned a lot. You've found new locations. You've shot at night, really difficult. Shot in the bugs. I pulled ticks off of me for like 2 days after going out there, I think from getting the firewood. Hopefully Caitlin didn't get a bunch, but I had mosquito bites up and down my legs from that night. It was bad. You guys were really out roughing it. You guys went from the sand and the heat and the stickers to the night and the smoke and the bugs. You picked some pretty rough stuff. But you may actually go back in and tell this story again 10 years from now. I may sit and just, maybe it sparked something that you're just not quite sure. But I think the monster thing's fun. There's something spookier to me. Like, okay, a monster is terrifying. Rip your limbs off, come out, he's spying on you. It's thinking grizzly bear type or even something crazier.
Those are things you're supposed to be afraid of. You're not supposed to be afraid of someone you're...
So, yeah, that's what I think, the realism of the fact that where you guys ended up with it was spookier in the fact that it was more realistic and not quite so fantastical. But that's subjective, and that's, to each their own. You started off with like an urban, right? It was Hamburger Man or something, like an urban legend, urban myth from the area. Because I remember we have the video from that one of those previous lectures, and when we were wrapping up, you guys were like looking at Hamburger Man stuff. But I think real is more terrifying. Something that can actually happen to me is a little more terrifying. But that is subjective. What else? Anything else that you guys, in hindsight, would do different, change, or something that?
Like the first day, plan out the entire schedule of like just get everything sorted out. Like, these are our shoot days. This is how much time we actually have to edit at the end.
So the schedule is something that you would do better or different, or actually do? Did you guys have a schedule?
It was always, it just ended up being like, hey, does this work for everybody? Or
It's just availability, as much as anything.
Whereas we
Yeah.
could have just discussed it at the very beginning and stuck to like a schedule or structured schedule, or tried to. Not that it's
Sure. Those are all things that I hope help move the rest of the projects forward more efficiently. And not everything's going to be such a tight deadline. Not everything's going to be a complete story either. A lot of what we'll do in cinematography will not be incorporating Gage having to check out audio. You guys having to like dual direct and tell a story on the fly. But it's a great experience for you guys to implement all of that. I would say one thing that in the future that'll help you, especially for that day one, is location scouting. You just didn't really have you knew about locations, maybe places you had been. You've shot out at our family's house. I think almost everybody had been out there at least one time or another, shot there, or seen it in other classes with other projects. So that wasn't new, but you hadn't shot it with this project in mind. I think that'll help a ton. I think location scouting is one of my favorite things. Manifesting a story in your head, like going from this house or this field or this park and trying to see that story. going out, even if it's just a cell phone, just snapping some of that to get kind of that image developed. And part of that is because I really enjoy this. This is my favorite part of the process of filmmaking, is being in production, running the camera with lights and an actor or subject. So I think location scouting will be a really big thing that we implement. It's going to be super important next semester for those of you that'll be taking production management and logistics. That's a whole chapter of that class because you have to turn in your locations. So I think that'll be something that I mean, I experienced it going out there with you guys. And some of the things we talk about is weather reports and access and safety. Just the time of days that you could go that caused you to have to go to Dillon Nature Center earlier in the heat because they close at a certain time. So location scouting is one thing that I'm not knocking you guys for because you didn't have the time, but I'll definitely want to see way better location scouting in the future because, hopefully you have that ability too. And that guerrilla style run and gun, independent approach has made some of the best films in history, but also, what you know now, in hindsight, you can implement later and it'll hopefully make your other projects stronger. Anything else? So the story is the obvious thing. You guys didn't have that as your, it almost would have been easier if I just said, here's a script, you're gonna go make this thing, like we've done with other assignments in the past. But since it was a short shot competition independent of the college itself, I think it was really important that this was an independent student film from conception all the way through. Anything else that comes to mind?
I would just think maybe just logs, because when I listened to this on my phone, I mostly heard bugs. Like when you were laying down and it said your line, I couldn't hear it on my phone because the bugs were just so loud.
Yeah, if you walked outside my house in the evening right now, you can't hear each other talk. It's so loud. The locusts, I think, are just like screaming in the backyard. Gage was definitely working with what he could to stay, one, out of the shot, because you guys had some wide shots there. And then Alex and Caitlin had to work with what they had from, your room tone and ambient sounds. So the audio is rough, but this is a cinematography class. And I think Gage and Alex did a good job with what they had, for sure. I definitely, it's so, lavs are maybe even like strategically placed mics or ADR, but you know how I feel about ADR. It's so easy for ADR to come off really cheesy. But really, you got, even the dialogue itself is a little cheesy, but you just kind of worked with what you had in the time, It told the story. That's what's most important. Would it help to get some of that ambient sound layered a little better? Maybe. But yeah, that's something that audio balancing and mixing, we can look at trying to mix it a little more. Because I think what Gage had was good. It just you guys needed more time to balance it and mix it. And you just really didn't have that luxury to get it out in time. So they had to sacrifice. Story first, quality second, unfortunately, which is crazy to say in the cinematography class where quality is about everything. But yeah, I think you guys did great with what you had time for. But would it benefit you in these film festivals to go back and mix it? Probably. Because there's definitely places where it clearly just cuts and the balance is totally changed. And so, Alex, how did that process go when you and Caitlin were in post? And it sounded like few of you guys were there for post, but you want to talk about audio just real quick?
I tried to do the best that I could with it, but some of it was in-camera audio, which was an issue because
I noticed that.
Some of it was just missing some of the actual boom audio, which is why.
Yeah, there were times where you guys just didn't have an audio kit, right? Yeah, so you can't record it if you don't have it. So.
It was the last thing I did, so yeah, I'd like to think that if I had more time, it would be more balanced because
Sure.
The audio levels are all over the place.
Yeah, I think Gage was definitely fighting an uphill battle there too, just being like, I'm all of a sudden the audio guy now in cinematography class. So.
I couldn't hear anybody because they're either like filming close to the highway,
Yeah.
cars.
Yeah.
Like either turn down really low,
Mhm.
so I just hear the actors are turning up high, so I can hear them, but
Sure.
I hear other shit.
I think you did a really good job considering the circumstances all of, not just having the kit with you, but that's part of location scouting is I look for what are our audio sources here that are going to be frustrating, like a train, highway, river, dog next door. We've, not myself, but a friend had a situation where they shot in a studio like this, and it was very controlled. There was a manhunt that day, so about every 5 minutes a helicopter rolled over and ruined their audio the whole time. So you just can't always control everything. And that's why I think the short shot was a great way to kick off the class, was because the reality of our industry is a lot of unknown circumstances, and basically we're just problem solvers day in and day out, right? Let's keep moving. I want to talk about some things. I think this is great here. Kicking off, this was right out of Aiden's head. You said jump cut day one. I got this idea for a jump cut going through. Great composition. I love the composition. It's just so nice. If we took a rule of thirds diagram, you guys hit that perfect. You definitely earned that shot. That was not an easy shot for you guys to get. I know, because I was pulling stickers out. I think Aiden had stickers in class that next lecture. Okay, so here we get into what if I was pitching this shot to a client, for instance, for a commercial shoot, they'd be like, all right, you guys clearly don't know what you're doing. But for telling this story, this is great. You guys didn't just go for simple and easy. You went for how do we tell the story the best. And this is your character through the camera, through the lens. That POV is very powerful. It's been done for 100+ years, and it works. It works great. I like this. I know.
We could redo that. That was still while we were focused on this monster shot.
Yeah.
Try and make Michael either at my height or taller, any way we could. Like either put me in front of him more.
Michael wasn't being. You weren't the killer at this time.
No. That's, another thing. If we could go back knowing, like at the end, or if we had our rough script and like committed to the one idea.
I don't know. Maybe. Don't quote me on this today, but maybe we wrap up the semester. I want you to do a portfolio, obviously. That's the most important thing for future of your job, but maybe we revisit this story after we have some more things through, and maybe we incorporate someone from the audio class so Gage can be more of a cinematographer and not have to run a boom pole in audio or in cinematography. Maybe we talk about something like that, because there's a lot of things that I'm sure you guys would do differently if you had another shot at it.
At the end of the semester, though, all that's going to be...
You wouldn't be able to, but you could revisit the whole thing in a different capacity. Like I said, don't quote me on that. I don't mind changing up projects as we go to fit the class and the people involved. But my big thing is, horizon line, but that was something we already talked about, so I won't waste any time there. And then just where I like my rule of thirds, you're sitting right through the middle. I'd rather see that head on the top third or the bottom third with some sort of subject filling that frame. But again, Colton's up there just running around trying to, get what he can while he's there. You guys didn't even have a shot list, right? So you're just out.
Most of that day I was just recording.
It's very documentary style, and you're just gathering, and then you'll figure out that story later, which not always what you wanted. I think that's a cool shot. That shows kind of the rigors, rough. And I'm glad you had a shoulder mount. This one, I don't remember if you had this one in your head before you went, but you definitely talked about it when we got back that you were trying to get this particular shot. And the funny thing was, the next day, after you did this, I was showing something in Studio and Field, and they literally had one of these, almost exactly. I saved it in a different user. I screenshot it so I could show you later. I can try and pull up. It just cracked me up that literally the next day we were talking about production, and that a shot like that came out. And I think you guys seem, well, granted, it's not like you were far, far away, but I think the Dillon Nature Center to our property to Sand Hills State Park, I think that flowed fine. I don't think that was it didn't feel like you were leaving different addresses and locations.
I was a little worried about the beginning.
Sure.
Yeah, it jumps around a lot, and I didn't want it to be really jarring.
But it worked fine because it feels like you cover a lot of ground. Now that's where color, tonality, keeping that temperature consistent is really important. because you shot these on separate days in separate locations, but it didn't feel like you guys were doing that. I think it worked. I love this shot. Little focus rack. How simple is that? But it just adds to the production value so well when you do something simple like a little focus rack. Now I want to look at this shot because this is literally what we're talking about in studio and field right now is depth of field. And so clearly you're probably as wide as you can get, I'm assuming, on this, Aiden. I think this was your camera. You were shooting with the 50, right?
I want to say it was like 58 or something.
Was it a little prime?
Off the top of my head.
Yeah, I think you had the 50. We don't have like a 58. It does have the lens, like it says 58 right here because it has like, that's the size of the lens cap. So that's probably where you got 58. But you were shooting with the 50. That opens up to a 1.8. 50 millimeter, 1.8 f-stop. It's an f reading because it's a photography lens. It's a pretty cheap little lens, but man, they're great. They really do open up wide. Back in my very dark wedding days, I used the 50 quite a bit when I'd get into like the reception party afterwards, and it was just like DJ lights. I open that 50 up. But what you get when you open up, very low depth of field. So Michael's soft. Aiden's a little sharper. I really couldn't tell you on Colt. He looks soft, but it's kind of strange because he's a little closer. And it might just be the exposure, huh?
He was in between us, and
Yeah.
I think with less light hitting him, it's harder to see if he's soft or
Well, yeah, you're right. And also the fire is a little soft. So our focal point is right here on Aiden. Had you had the ability, so this is an example of if we'd have had more people, more crew, Gage could have not been worried about audio. He could have been racking focus back and forth or something like that, you know? Just, these are hindsight things that would be cool if we incorporated another class. That way you guys could focus on what we're trying to do specifically. It works though. I can tell who you are. So the focus is soft, but the focus isn't so blurred that you're just a glob of bokeh. So let's talk composition again. We're at a low. That night we discussed this, and I think Aiden may have, I could be wrong, I don't want to give credit in the wrong direction, but you guys discussed starting low with Aiden, altering that image. You clearly did that. Aiden's very much being looked down upon at this point. As the conversation takes place, the discussion turns a little more heated. We start to raise that camera for Michael, lower it, lower it. So now Aiden's at eye level because he's starting to gain some power, he's starting to gain some traction, being frustrated. But Michael, you do pull back the power with dialogue, but Aiden still leaves standing at that point. When a character stands in a scene, it should mean something. It shouldn't be just accidental. And in this case, it is a confrontational, aggressive stance, and the camera angle complemented that well. Michael's now at an eye level. We have a dirty shot back and forth. Dirty is great for an argument because you get that reaction from the person that is in front of the camera. I like that the fire is kind of in those dirty angles too, because you know, fire can definitely replicate a metaphor for confrontation, heat. Yeah. Okay, so I don't remember you, before I left, I don't think you had shot Colton yet. So did you wrap that? Was that last?
That was like one of the last things we did. We did the sleep shots, and I think that it.
We got the fire shot, the rack at the very end.
some years to be left before that.
Oh, yeah. Well, we didn't. We were like, oh yeah, Bobby's gone. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we kept going, and then we all looked around, and we were like,
Yeah, I snuck off. I'd been bit enough by that time.
But yeah, we did Colton, the sleeping shots, and then like a bit of the fire, and then we got like audio of the fire at the very end.
Okay. So did you guys discuss Colton's angle?
We thought about him being just neutral the whole time,
He wasn't taken aside.
So, I remember talking about him just being straightforward with him.
So that's important if we have Colton, Aiden, Michael, and we have our fire. If you had shot from this direction, or if you had shot from this direction, you might have been taking a perspective that he was talking more to that individual. I like that you shot him straight on. And I wanted to discuss it briefly because we didn't talk about it that night. So I didn't know if that was just accidental or if that was intentional. And there's plenty of happy accidents in film, trust me. And I think it could have worked if you took one of those sides, but did you guys discuss that? Or because you basically took this position of the fire, in a sense, although it is hitting him on his left side camera, or screen right. Or is it just kind of like, here we go? You did say neutral, which you definitely did that with the eye line.
I don't remember really discussing it thoroughly. I think we were just kind of like, let's get your shots. And so we kind of just kept it neutral, like Michael was saying. We were like, let's just keep it level. Like, we don't need it up or down. We just,
Yeah, because we didn't really care for like a dirty shot of us like looking at him from like our point of views, or even from his point of view looking at either of us.
Yeah, I don't think it would have added much personally.
It's just like the character overall is just supposed to be neutral. Like, he wasn't like supposed to agree or disagree or anything like that. He's just
Yeah.
like, hey, come on, like, let's calm down. We've had a long day and everything like that.
A couple of things with this. I like that you stayed with a medium, so you show him kind of tinkering with the camera, which is where your priority is camera, and people just not, or because you didn't take a side. You weren't like, oh, I really want to hear Michael's story, or oh, I don't even want to hear Michael's story. It was just, let's just not fight. The camera, the cinematography of this is so important for that, even though it's such a subtle thing to stay you wanted him to stay neutral, so the camera needs to stay neutral. And I think you did a good job with that. 1, eye line. 2, a medium shot. If you'd gone super tight, then it would have evoked what? It would have evoked more emotion, right? That would have showed that you cared more. Really, you didn't much care whether there was a story or not. You just didn't want there to be an argument. Had you gone, I really want to hear this story, then you would need to have shot this from Michael's perspective. Had you have gone, I don't even want to hear another story either, then it would be from Aiden's perspective. So what we tell our audience visually throughout this semester is going to be super, super imperative. I think you guys did that well. And you're back to Michael and Aiden. It's a visual class.
Even the arguing is just better because like you can tell the emotion on the like faces, I guess, or like that there's an altercation going on, but the dialogue's not important. Just that there's a problem happening.
Sure. So I don't want to get too far. I mean, I think you could have had Michael looking at the camera a little more here. The camera could have been placed a little more on top of Aiden's lap, but that's a little being picky.
Talk about that because I asked if I should be looking at him.
Yeah, should you be? And
I
that's
decided not to do that
okay.
because I did like the first skit, and then I was like, well, I'm looking like right past it. Do we want to look at it or off from it? And we agreed to not have
Yeah.
us look at it.
Okay. So here, this is probably your most important shot in a lot of ways, at least for this scene. He's kind of down the middle. I don't like down the middle a lot, but had he been on this side, on this far left side, facing that direction, that would give him a lot of negative space to work into. Like, he has a place that he can go. If you had put him on this third and he's looking that direction, that kind of has him trapped. He's running out of room. He's running out of real estate visually. Essentially backing him into a corner where he's going to have to make a rash decision. When you have him kind of centered, it kind of just leaves like, well, what's next? I don't think it's bad. I would have wanted to see, had you had time to storyboard and think about this and maybe even run through some test shots. Personally, I probably would have positioned him a little more over here, like, oh, I've got no other avenue to go anymore. I'm gonna have to kill this dude. I can't take another story from Wikipedia. Or on the other side, going, look at all this space. I now have this room to roam into. I'm so angry. I've taken control. I have power. One of the things that we're going to talk about a lot with this stuff is that it is subjective. And there isn't always a right, but it depends on what you want to convey there. Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was thinking even like if we tried to rewrite this later, but if we had like pulled non-Michael's side and it was more of like a ganging up thing, could we have this sort of shot to show like isolation then?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where, if you were going more isolated, I would say further to the right, depending on where he's facing. So does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah,
If you're,
keep that back.
yeah, if you're your screen, and you're facing, this way, walking out, you don't have a lot of real estate to work into. That visually will tell your audience that a tough decision is going to have to be made here. Had you been all the way over here and you have all that space, that leaves a negative space of room for you to work into. Okay. When we start, the next assignment is going to be stills, and that'll give you a chance to play with framing quite a bit. But we'll keep moving for the sake of time. And I like that you have them kind of storm off there. You remember when we talk about breaking down a scene, you start with your master, work your way in through the mediums and the close shots, and then you dial back out. I like to bookend a scene master to master to remind everybody who was in this scene. Where were we at? Assume your audience is stupid, because they probably are. And I don't mean that they're like just mentally incapable, but they're naive because they don't know your story. You're not telling Batman for the 12th time this decade. So we got to remind everyone what we're doing here, right? Completely original story. So I like that you ended with the master. Great choice there. One, getting yourself the coverage for your team in post and be able to do that. And that's really hard to get all that coverage when you don't have a shot list or a script or a storyboard or time to really plan all that out. So you guys did well there. Fade to black, so we all kind of know. We haven't left the location, but what's happened from that last shot till now? Yeah, thank you. Their time has passed. Cross dissolve, fade to black, those are all great metaphors visually for people to understand that time has moved on. So I like that. I mean, the imagery is really dark, but you guys were also working with relatively cheap lights with the fire out in the field, not near a place with a power source. If you had done this on a larger production, you probably have generators and bigger lights, and maybe even take like the Arri S60 out or a Joker, K5600, something that could really blast more light. You just didn't really have that to your in the timing and access for all that to take place. Okay, so I was a little confused here. I thought you were going to start off with Michael just missing in the morning. So you want to talk about that briefly?
I kind of wanted it to be like he walks into like, so he's like sharper focus at the beginning and then he walks off into like soft focus.
Sure.
So like A, like walking into the unknown, and B, walking into like, that's his send-off, I guess.
Yeah, I get that. I get where you're, because you start a little sharper. So here's our big reveal. I guess where I'm confused, or just a little lost, is he's following you, and you kind of took him to that, kind of like took him to where Michael was, and that seems like you would probably not want to do that, but that's okay. If it's...
Well, this was when we were doing the monster idea first.
You were still living in the monster idea when you shot some of this coverage? Yeah.
Swapped that, like, I think right after shooting this bit.
Yeah, when we started running, I said, well, wait a minute, your shoe is in the frame with Michael. I said, if this monster idea doesn't work, what if at the end we see your shoe again? Because he like splits off up here, and then
Yeah.
at the end you see that it's you who it's the murderer. It was kind of like one of those like last minute things, like it popped in my head. I was like, well, that's a different twist too.
Yeah, one of the things about not having a script or even a guide in this, or even an outline really, is that you guys really had to get out there in Dillon H and go, what are we trying to show our audience? And even though it came off a little confusing, I still think you guys have some interesting imagery and did a pretty good job considering what you had to work with. And I think I like that you vignetted it. Now, was that something you added, Alex? Yeah. You closed that iris down. Is that look? Now, I think that's great. I think visually we have, it's almost like, fade into black, in real life. Like you're dying, you're fading to black ultimately. And I love that shot. So the story is slightly rough, but it could be way, way, way more rough. Think how much time you guys put into your fight scene last semester. You had twice as many people, and you had like 4 times as much time. And it was even shorter, I think, runtime-wise. So, yeah, and that one had way more of like a, way more rehearsal, way more help. You had like 6 cameras standing around when you broke what's-his-name's arm, So I think you guys are just, fought an uphill battle with half the team and way less time, even less teachers for that matter. Brandon was helping Joey quite a bit during that period. And so I'm pretty proud of where it ended up. Let's look at, let's get into this discussion of, is there anything else you guys want to say about that at this particular point? Okay, and we can always come back around to it. Let's talk about Film Freeway briefly. We are running out of time, but we can at least kick into this. Does anybody have a Film Freeway account right now? Alex does? Yeah, you probably do too. Yeah, that's right, you're graduating this semester. So here's my Film Freeway account. This is such a great avenue. When I started in the industry, you had to send your form in through the mail with a check, for $40 as the average cost, still a pretty typical cost. And there was a few hundred festivals maybe internationally at that time, and you really didn't enter anything that you couldn't attend at that time either. That was just kind of, basically it was well known that if you weren't physically there, you really didn't have a chance to get in or especially win something. And that shouldn't be why you guys are entering a festival, is to win, but you should always have that kind of hope in mind, because you never know. You got to pay to play, basically. You got to put the time in and get in there. So let's just go through the basics here just on the opening page. I like to click open only unless I'm researching for something in the future. They do have other stuff: music, photography, online awards, and screenwriting. So there's a lot of things that you can enter. In fact, I had a friend just enter a really, really great script into a screenwriting contest that the winner got funded and their film gets made. So he didn't win, but he made finalist. And so finalists still got theirs published to a big, broad group, and some of those will get funded based on just getting the access and the recognition. So something that I like about this, I can't enter a student film from mine because I'm not listed as a student. That'll be part of your profile when you put it in. But all of these have at least a student section. That doesn't mean they're student-oriented entirely, but they have a section. Now the other thing I like to do is go, $0. What free festivals can I enter as a student? And so when you click Submit Now, it'll give you kind of these standards of what you can enter. 0 budget to $5,000, which would be definitely pretty much every film you'll do in here. And then you got to go through, and some of them have some specific things. Might be a regional thing, might be a language requirement, might be a subject matter requirement, might be a requirement from the filmmakers, like maybe you need to be a female, but that just depends. I'm trying to see if I see one that I know. There's so many now, somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000 festivals. And it's as easy as entering. So if I see, okay, this one fits my subject matter, which I have no idea if it does, and then it'd help if it was in English. My Spanish is rough. There's a lot of foreign ones here. Here's one in the United States. I should be able to read this one. So I go through and I click project. I select one of my films that I think would do well here, and then I click student, and then add to cart and check out. And that's where if it costs money, then you can enter it the way. But they also, so here's another thing, maybe you enter a horror fest because that's kind of what you were going for. That may have reset all that stuff, but let's just see this one. So if you're a gold member, which you can do also, you can see how expensive some of these festivals get. It's 65 bucks if you wanted to enter a specific film. Now, what's important, what you need to go in and create, let me find one where I've set it up a little more thorough. I'll do Santa's Night Out. So with Santa's Night Out, oh, I must have been using my Vimeo. This is why I like to enter the actual project file. So you can upload up to a 10 gigabyte file. They can download that straight from Film Freeway and utilize it in the festival in some cases. Or you could, and this is why it's broke, is because I had a Vimeo link. You can use your YouTube link to get considered, but they won't be able to screen that YouTube link most likely, and you really don't want them to. What I wanted to do with you guys is create the file from scratch, but we don't have time to do that right now. I guess we could look into it a little bit on Wednesday, but we're right there to be about out of time. But you can enter a trailer if you have a feature. I don't really do trailers for short films usually. Behind the scenes, it's kind of fun to see who all was involved, and look, oh, no, similar, using the same shoulder mount you guys used. Some more behind the scenes. And we shot it in October, like a month, like right at the beginning of October. Doing ADR, and he had a little narration in that. Our bar scene. So people, sometimes the festivals really eat that up. A director's statement might be good if you are doing a really empowered film on, say, like some sort of a controversial topic. Santa going out and getting drunk and whatnot really wasn't something I needed a lot of statement for. But people do really enjoy bios and a little bit of information about the film. Credits, super important, as you know. Specifications, in this case, this is why I wanted to do it with you guys to help you a little bit, but it's a short film on the project type. Genres, it can hit more than one genre. We've won in fantasy and we've won in comedy for this film, so we've entered festivals in both subject matters. Runtime, incredibly important because there will be festivals that have a minimum or a maximum runtime that you want to fall within. Because if you put down 10 minutes and your film was 4 minutes and the runtime had to be over 5, they'll just disqualify you. So if it's not accurate, they'll still kick you out, and that's just a waste of everyone's time. Completion date, I usually push this to the next year. A lot of festivals have like a 2-year minimum on completion date. Production budget, also pretty important. If there's a minimum requirement or something, some of them require you to enter a category, it had to be within this budget or under this budget. Origin, also super important. Like I tried to enter one in Colombia the other day and it had to be from a Colombia filmmaker. It couldn't be from me, so it could be that the other way around too. English, very important because that's the most common language that you're going to see. So sometimes if it's not in English, you have to have English subtitles. So in this case, by saying it's in English, I can get into festivals and you don't want to have to create subtitles later if you don't have that in the budget or time. Digital aspect ratio 16:9. Color, first-time filmmaker, no. Student project, no. Both of these are going to be really important for you to enter student film festivals. So when we have more time, Wednesday we can dig in and go over that. Real quick before I send you guys, and if you guys want to stick around and get that put on, if you're wanting to do that, I'm more than happy to do that. I would like to do it as a lecture also, just to have it shown during time that you guys have allocated with me. Any questions jumping into that real fast? Okay. I want to give you this real fast before we break because I'm going to have you guys do this week. Has anybody ever entered a photo competition of any sort? Anything like that? This might be, depending on what you have in your library or your portfolio, this might be just simply creating an account for some of you. But I want you to, and then uploading, I want you guys to create a Guru Shots account. So that'll be your next assignment. Due on Friday. We're going to review your stuff on Friday. So everyone's going to upload 50 images. It can be anything. It can be something you have shot when you were a kid. It can be something you shoot this week. And then from that, I want you to enter 5 different contests. This will not cost you anything. You can spend money on Guru Shots. I do not want you to for this. But Guru Shots is a great platform, community, whatever you want to refer to it as. It's almost like Instagram with competitions and access to various events, challenges, team stuff. But essentially, you're going to create an account. This is an individual assignment. You can't do this as a group. And then I want you to upload 50 images of anything you want. It's okay if it's a cell phone shot. This was a cell phone shot earlier, and it's going to be, I can't remember where it's going. This cell phone shot is going to play somewhere in South Africa, Johannesburg, South Africa. And it was just a cell phone image that I got earlier this summer when the girls were playing in the slip and slide. This one, also a cell phone shot. Now, this one here of Michael and I's daughters, this was shot with a Canon 5D Mark IV with about a $2,000 lens. So not all of them are really low-end cameras. And in that case, what we'll talk about is sometimes subject matter is always the most important thing. It's definitely more important than shooting with a great camera. This one was shot with a Canon T2i, like a 2009, 2010 model camera. So understanding your equipment will be more important, and putting yourself into those subjects will be more important than having a really expensive camera. One of my most successful ones so far, if I can find it, I was taking the student camera out. Oh, this right here. The T6i, and you can see all this information here from the metadata. Canon T6i, ISO 400, 1/100th of a second, because I was in the trees. A 4.5 f-stop. I was at 105 millimeters on a 24-105 lens. So just with the student camera, I was able to get one of my more popular shots. So if you want to check out a DSLR, please do. We have some if you need to get one for the week just to take some photos. What I want to do on Wednesday is go over Lightroom with you and show you how to process some of these if you haven't done that yet. Because sometimes what you have sitting in your cell phone is, this is worthy of doing well in a competition, but it just needs cropped and colored and formatted just a little differently. So we'll cover some of that. Cinematography is just basically adding, it's photography with just making the images move and lining them all up together. So it's super important for you as a cinematographer to be snapping photos every day, whether it's with your phone or not. Action camera, phone, I don't care. I want you to be out getting imagery and adding to your portfolio. Composition, lighting, what you're utilizing, and then processing from color to all that. Sometimes black and white just works a lot better than color. And some of these I do in both, and that's a great debate, I think. Let me see if I can find one that I did in both real quick before I let you guys break. Darn, they have it formatted. I've done pretty much every single thing I've done on this, I've done through the app on my phone. So in some cases, I don't know where everything is right off the bat. It appears to be structured a little differently than. I could probably select that. Oh, that's why. There we go. So in the case of this pond, the color version versus the black and white is one heck of a debate on which one is better for what reason and how that depth works and how the color manipulates your imagery and how your audience takes that. I did it with another photo here where it's just a tiny little insect. I think in color it's cool because it's green, but I think in black and white it's more powerful. Specifically the antenna here I think stands out way better in the black and white and adds extra depth. I think its body is a little more transparent in the black and white as well. So those are some of the things that we'll discuss, but what you need to know for now is you got to create an account, just a free account, and then you need to find 50 photos, whether you got to take them. I mean, everybody probably has shot 50 photos. I probably shoot 50 photos every couple of days, whether I'm trying or not. Does anybody not have any portfolio of photography started at all? Because some of you have taken the photography class, right? I don't care. It just doesn't have to be brand new photos. That's not so much the point yet. But I do want you to get the account started. And then you'll enter 5 competitions. And this is what I love about it. And this is where it'll really help you guys. When you look at these challenges, they have various subject matter. This one, big and small. It needs an image that's big, needs something that's small. So I put my daughter with her grandpa, big and small. Orange, anything with the subject matter in the color orange. Progressive architecture, society, a layered image, night photography, solo has to be a single subject in the image. Some of them are very much just enter, put it out there, get it up, like any open subject, but many of them are very specific, which I just love for this project. Okay, any questions about that? Okay. So yeah, what we'll do on Wednesday, Film Freeway, Lightroom. Has anybody used Lightroom yet? Okay. It'll help if you guys have a chance to see how I utilize Lightroom. And what's great about that still image is it's doing what you'll do with a film, with a moving image, all the same, but it really simplifies it. The processing's way faster. Photography is so streamlined compared to what you guys just went through shooting a film. So we're going to go from probably your most rigorous assignment you've ever had in the program to dialing it back, taking a breath, and just doing, oh gosh, this thing needs some help. Dialing it back and just doing some stills so that you can think composition and color and lighting and subject without worrying about audio and did the dialogue come out cheesy and all that fun stuff. So, all right, cool. I'll be sticking around.